I introduce Lisa, who will introduce the introduction.
I will introduce Amy, and we all are I would assume, very familiar with Amy Reichert. She's written 5 different novels set in Wisconsin in various forms, and she, beyond being a writer, is just an amazing advocate of independent bookstores, aspiring writers, and the culture of reading. If you've spent time in line listening to her chat, or if you know her from her podcasts and various spots, she loves to talk about reading. And so it doesn't surprise any of us that she's on our local library board and county board for the library. Mm-hmm. And she's a member of the Tall Poppies Writer Group. And if you're not familiar with them, it's a really unique organization of women writers from all different genres in publishing. And they're a collective that work together to just connect each other, support each other, and talk about books. So their events have been a lot of fun this time during COVID too. So Amy is just full of joy and full of information and reading. And tonight we're going to talk about her new book, the Kindred Spirits Supper Club, that takes place in the Dells. So we'll get a little Dells history and a little bit about romance. So Amy, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Yeah, 2 of my favorite bookstores. And I had the pleasure of seeing you both yesterday when I was signing all the pre-orders. Early in the thing plug, if you still want to order, there are links on their websites, and I can sign those copies for you. So you can get a signed copy, only way you can get one. So the Kindred Spirits Supper Club is my new book. It is, like Lisa said, set in the Wisconsin Dells. And for people who maybe aren't familiar with that, it is in is that the right way? I think so. Imagine this is Wisconsin. It's like right around here, kind of smack in the middle of the state. And it is equal parts kitschy touristy town and beautiful natural setting with the winding Wisconsin River and sandstone cliffs. So it's just this very quirky place. And I really wanted to set something there and celebrate that area. So my main character, Sabrina Monroe, she has to move back home for a variety of reasons. And once she's back home, she literally and figuratively confronts the ghosts of her past. Her family has a secret. The women in it can see ghosts, and they help them with any unfinished business they have so they can move on to wherever they move on to. Unfortunately, there is one long-term ghost who happens to also be Sabrina's best friend, Ghost Molly. They've never been able to help her. And since Molly never got her happy ending, she is determined that Sabrina will get hers. So when the new supper club owner moves to town, Molly takes it upon herself to start shoving them together and encourages Sabrina to pursue that. And of course, when things start happening, I don't want to say too much. Then things start happening. We'll just leave it there. But along the way, we find out a lot about Sabrina. She has anxiety. As a result, she connects to the world in unique ways. So it was a fun book for me to write. I really love these characters. They came to life for me in a really special way. So yeah, that's the scoop.
Where to begin?
Where to begin?
So you've written a number of romantic comedies. I feel like you've done a deep dive into the genre with this one. And I would say that the thing about this book is that you've got the romance, and then you've got the kind of speculative element to it that almost has a mystery quality. So you're doing some genre smashing here. I wanted to know, first of all, are you getting the experience that I'm getting, which is like, people will read the book and they'll say, I really like the romance. What was the ghost thing doing? And then another person comes to me and goes, God, I really love the ghost thing, but why did you? I was like, you should love them both. But it's sort of like, but I find it's interesting. It's like, I think it's doubling your audience. So I feel like that.
I hope so.
Yes. Because there's something for everyone.
I think so. I really had fun mashing things together because I personally like books that are just a little outside the normal. with that something's just a little different. So call it magical realism, call it, cozy fantasy, call it whatever you want. I've heard some different terms thrown about, but I love that. And I haven't had the chance to meet a lot of readers for obvious reasons, but the few people that have reached out to me kind of like, it's sort of a nice rom-com with this unexpected twist, if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered your question or if there was even a question and I just took over the conversation.
No, that's the way, that's what these things are supposed to be. You're supposed to take over the question. Good job.
Thanks.
But the ghosts do sort of weave this story together and add a whole nother element. It allows you to introduce some history and some inner dialogue that I think if the ghosts weren't there would have made it a different kind of book.
Yeah. I
completely needed. I don't worry. Anyone who says, what was the ghost there for? I'm like, you need that ghost.
I think so too. I think because, on one hand, her whole family's purpose is to help these ghosts move on, but she's never been able to move on herself in her existence. So ultimately, without, I don't want to give away things, as she takes on more of that role, I think it helps her grow into her own life, so to speak. So sorry, that was kind of vaguer than I meant it to be, but I didn't want to get specific.
Oh, it's hard to not do especially because normally, by the time you're actually on the road with this book or whatever,
right?
A lot of people have read it, but people were emailing me today and saying, why didn't they get my book yet? And I'm like, this is a pre-launch.
It's not out until tomorrow.
It's not out. Sometimes people are like, how did you get to read it? It's like, I don't know how to ask questions.
I'm special.
That's the answer. You are special. That's why you get to read it early.
What were your inspirations for some of the paranormal stuff in the book?
So if you've been to the Dells in the last 10 years, on the main drag, there is a bar/restaurant called Ghost Molly's Showboat Saloon. And that is my Ghost Molly. So I was there doing research about the book and I'm like, gosh, that's kind of fun. Ghost Molly. I wonder what that's about. What's her story? Because I was trying to find some local urban legends that maybe I could incorporate some way. And when I started researching Ghost Molly, there's not much about her, but she died in like 1932 and she lived in the apartment upstairs. And all she would do is like flick lights on and slam doors and stuff. So that was kind of it. And I thought it would be fun to give Ghost Molly a history. And that's where that all came from. Like, why was she there? Why did she die? What happened to her? And then, to give her life, so to speak, someone had to see her. And that is where the whole, the family, that the Monroe family women can see ghosts came into play, because I thought that would be fun. So that's where Ghost Molly came from. And then of course, inventing the other ghosts that pop up was just me amusing myself. Which is really that's what writing is anyway, isn't it?
I think about the lists and the notes and the quick frantic grabbing a piece of paper and pencil to write down all of the unfinished business of each and every one of these ghosts.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's a dangerous thing when you start opening that up. And I do, of all of my books, not that there's ever been any discussion of doing a series, but of all of my books, I feel like this one has the most series potential, because it would be really easy to keep coming up with things and where you could go next. I think that would be fun.
It would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would almost be more of like a cozy mystery in a lot of ways, which I'd be okay with. I think that would be fun. That would be
somebody already asked, speaking of cozy, were there recipes? And I'm like, just for drinks.
Just for drinks. Though I do have, if you go to my website, we do have recipes for cheese curds, a port wine cheese spread, bacon wrapped chestnuts, which isn't in the book, but to me is kind of a very supper clubby hors d'oeuvre. And then of course, pink squirrels, which is drinks.
How wonderful. So the answer was yes.
Yes, there are recipes. In fact, I made the deep fried cheese curds today and did a video that on a Facebook group I'm part of.
Oh,
So
you know, we're
Sorry.
close enough. You could have delivered
I could
them.
have brought you some. I could have. They would have been cold, and cold deep fried cheese curds are just not the same.
Not the same.
Just not
I
good.
like cold fried food generally, but maybe not cheese curds.
Not cheese curds.
Not cheese curds.
Yeah,
And that
I'm
kind of-
looking. I'm waiting for the recipe for the aranonsi to come out. The little rice balls. That's
know.
when you've got to partner with a restaurant. Daniel, you've got to
Yes.
get this made in
I love
Milwaukee.
arancini too.
But these
I
are
do
the ones with the
too.
beer and the
The
no.
brat
sauerkraut.
and the,
Yeah.
Yeah,
can
no,
skip the broth.
I'm hoping someone owns a supper club here and is like inviting you for a themed dinner eventually.
I would really love that, and I think Bartolotta's would be all right with that. I think they would be a good partnership. And hey, Bartolotta's, if you're watching, we could do a really fun event partnered with our local bookstores.
Somebody wants to know about your supper club map behind you.
Yes. So it's from the website, drinkwinsponsibly.com. They are actually a bar in downtown Milwaukee right next to the Five-Star Forum. And they also have a whole store online. That's where my t-shirt's from. That says Wisconsin. That's where my old fashioned glass is from. So I'm totally plugging them right now. But this map is really cool because it shows all of the locations of the supper clubs in the state. That's where I got it. And it's sort of, and some of them aren't there anymore, but I like that they left them on because it's kind of a nice historical piece and a nice homage to our tradition. So I had to get it I knew I was going to be doing virtual events. It needed to be in the background. So thank you to whoever noticed that.
I love that supper club documentary that they show on public television.
Yes.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
There's
And
also a
the
book
two
that goes
books.
with
It's
it.
the same guy who did the two books, Lisa.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It would require me, actually turning the TV on, which I don't really have.
Well,
Interesting.
Daniel's watching TV while
I
he has
don't
this
have
conversation.
So, Amy, how much research did you do in supper clubs?
I did some very practical dining research. I have been literally researching for that my whole life. But I did do, there's always Googling, and then I bought a few different books about supper clubs and the tradition. I watched that documentary like way in the beginning, so I don't remember much of it. But so I've done a bit of research about the tradition, how it really became popular in the 50s and 60s. I know, see, now this is where I remember I realize how much I've forgotten of my research. Because once you write it, you don't need to remember it anymore. I know some of them were dance halls. There is some thought that they could have started during Prohibition, but it was really in the 50s and 60s that they became a thing and spread. And I love that part of the supper club tradition is they're almost always kind of out in the boonies and not in the center of a town, because it was about getting out and going someplace special and having a night out in the town. I do explain to a lot of people are like, well, what's a supper club? They assume that it's an actual club that people kind of go from house to house and make supper together. And so it's fun kind of sharing that tradition in our state that we have in our state with the country and the world, because I do think it is unique. And it's a really fine difference between what a supper club is and what, say, fine dining or a family restaurant is. There is a lot of overlap. But at the same time, I feel like if you go into a supper club, you get it, because it's about going for the night out and having you're going to have your brandy old fashioned. You're probably going to get some port wine cheese spread and those little breadsticks in the wrapper. There's going to be French onion soup. I always go for prime rib, and it comes out on that metal plate with the black rib trimming. And then, of course, the ice cream drinks. To me, it's just that night out and that family atmosphere where even if they have no idea who you are, they're almost always going to treat you like a long lost cousin. So I just love supper clubs.
You have a favorite?
Many people asking that question,
Yes.
by the way.
That's a good one.
Including Karma.
Hi, Karma.
Mhm.
I would say my current favorite is probably one one that's close to me is Fox and Hounds, which is kind of by Holy Hill. They have really amazing German potato salad. Because that's another part, is a lot of these have like a salad bar. So you put in your giant order for half a cow, and then they tell you to go to a salad bar, and there's all sorts of yummy things on it. And they have like the spinach salad with the hot bacon dressing, and then the German potato salad and other things that I don't eat, coleslaw and stuff. But yeah, they're pretty good, and their old fashions are very good. So
somebody,
which is important.
Carla mentioned how much she loves relish trays. I just want to note from the history of the Supper Club book, which I read, it is it's a complete Wisconsin, a little bit of Minnesota, but they were actually more widespread. It's not that they never grew, they just died out everywhere else.
That's really true. That is very, very true. You're right. I forgot about that. But the relish trays are funny, because where else do you go when you get like all these little schnibblies? A lot of places don't do that anymore because it's too expensive. Yes.
Oh.
Like I know if you go to the Bartolotta Supper Club, Joey Gerard's, I think you can pay like as an appetizer.
Ridiculous.
I know. You can, I know. You need to have the little pats of butter and all that good stuff.
Well, my grandmother grew up in southern Minnesota and then moved to New Mexico. So I grew up in New Mexico, and every like family gathering, there would be a relish tray. So I just assumed that was what everybody did, but they don't.
Did they have a lot of summer sausage at everything too? Because that is a very Wisconsin thing.
Yes.
Can't have a party if it's not cheese and summer sausage.
Well, somebody asked for the Ron Faiola doc. This is actually, of course, because I looked up PBS Wisconsin and Milwaukee, and there's multiple Supper Club documentaries. So since I have more to do in life than link to Supper Club documentaries, I will just link to Ron Faiola's, which is the one I know.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I also want to say that I could continue to talk about Supper Clubs for the rest of the evening, especially because I haven't had dinner yet and I'm starving. But I wanted to know about some of the other details in the book that are real. We were talking about one of the things that we noticed was the Lisa and I noticed was the H.H. Bennett Photography Studio.
Yes. So that was when I was doing my research. I had a lot of fun, obviously, walking up and down Main Street. And when I walked into the H.H. Bennett studio, I knew it's one of those places that as soon as you walk in, you're like, oh yeah, I totally know this picture of the guy jumping onto Stand Rock. And what I didn't know before that was that H.H. Bennett is the person who revolutionized photography by making people able to take pictures of action and not have it be blurry. Because before that, if you had someone was moving, they were kind of blurry in the picture. So that was his big innovation. So that was really kind of cool. And I knew I had to put it in the studio, into the story. And they also have a really cute little gift shop where they have fun. You can get prints of all of the famous pictures, but you can buy really fun Wisconsin stuff. I have an actual old fashioned t-shirt that I bought there. Because that's my tour wardrobe, is fun Wisconsin t-shirts. But I wanted to, because he was alive at about the time when Molly and the people who she knew were going to be alive, I thought it would be fun to kind of wind that in. So obviously H.H. Bennett is real and his pictures are real. How that winds into the story is me taking some liberty with the past. Who knows?
It's called historical fiction.
There we go. I have written historical fiction apparently in a small part of the book, which is fun to do. I don't know how people do it for a whole book, but I do like doing small snippets of it. So I had a lot of fun making up my version of 1920, 1930s Wisconsin Dells and what that might look like.
And it was a picture of Molly, who then throughout the book changes her clothes frequently.
Yes.
Which
was so fun.
So how did you, because it really does sort of show Molly's free spirit and also a longing for a life she didn't get to live.
Yes. I really wanted, because I don't like scary ghost stories. So this came about, well, actually, this came about in a lot of strange ways. In way back when this was just a little tiny nugget of an idea, I was playing with the idea of trying to tell a rom-com using Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. These are the stupid ideas I come up with when I'm coming up with ideas.
I'm just sort of shocked by it.
So I know.
I think you should pursue it.
Someday I
Never
will,
too late.
It is never too late. So that may come back, because I love, my other great love is fantasy. I love fantasy literature. So The Hero's Journey speaks to me. So Molly initially, like one of her early incarnations was sort of as that, guiding figure helping Sabrina on this quest. And I actually think if you really wanted to push it, you probably could. Some person could write a paper about how this might actually have some echoes of The Hero's Journey in it. But initially, that's kind of where she came from, was that sort of wise figure, but also sidekick, also best friend. That's where that started. And I wanted her to, even though she was a ghost, to still embrace whatever existence she had, because that was her positive outlook. I really wanted her to be that foil to Sabrina with her anxiety, who was alive and in the world, but yet couldn't connect to people. Whereas Molly so much wanted to connect to everybody and couldn't. And her only way to do that was through the Monroe family women. So that was really kind of where that personality came from. And there are some characters during my writing have just popped, almost fully formed. And Molly from day one was almost always fully formed as what you have on the page. The other one would be Gertrude in Quincense of Coconut Cake. She just was that little figure. It's always the wise woman, I guess, who just pops in there. So
You're
that's
a sage specialist.
Maybe. I was born to write fantasy, I guess. Someday. There's that great epic fantasy in me. I doubt it.
Why don't you talk a little about Sabrina's anxiety? It's sort of something.
Something a little. It's so far. I like that in the current market of romances, especially, you are seeing characters who are not your typical ingenue type of main character. So you're seeing a lot of diversity from racial, sexual preferences, gender identity, and also neurodiversity. Mm-hmm. And I have people in my life where this is something that they struggle with. I struggle with it on a much smaller scale. And it was, I wanted to show somebody who was having some difficulties, and it had made her life challenging for a variety of reasons. But I also wanted to show the people around her and how they interacted with her. And that was where Ray came into play. Because Ray isn't just about being the handsome love interest. Ray looks at her and sees her as a unique human being who has reasons for behaving, even when he doesn't know what those reasons are, the way she does, and accepts her for who she is. And instead of expecting her to conform to his world, he tries to adjust and interact with her that makes her comfortable. And I liked, in essence, it's encouraging people to be a little bit more empathetic to people around them who are not like them. And I think we need a little bit more of that in the world right now, where it's not about expecting people to adjust to you. It's about, how can I maybe adjust a little bit to the people around me? And I really wanted her to be surrounded by people who loved her and accepted her and supported her so that she could live her life on her terms, healthy and grow as she needed to, if that makes sense. Sometimes I talk and I don't know if I wander off into the ether.
That made complete sense.
Oh, good. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
It made sense, but wandering's fine too.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's what this conversation.
That's what these are for.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was really nice to have Ray as sort of her, the other side that seemed to be somewhat open and accepting of, I mean, you know, not in a way that was unbelievable, but just in a way that was, you know, kind of even broaching healthy.
Right. Like, hey, I really like this person and this seems to be what they need right now. I think I'm going to do that. And being sensitive to other people's needs. And then, you know, eventually she does the same thing and they work together. So that's why I think there were times during editing, from various critique partners, they kind of said, well, he's a little too perfect. And I'm like, can't we just leave him be a little too perfect? There's nothing wrong with that once in a while.
Can't we have something to look, you know, dream for? Wait, this is your epic fantasy.
Yeah, that's right.
Your hero's journey.
My hero's journey.
Isn't that something though? Okay, so we were talking about this. I was talking to Lisa about this, I have a very strong romance reader on my staff, Rachel, and she reads a lot of romance and she's good at, I like to hear what she has to say about all of them. And we were also, like you were talking about the rise of diverse romances, how that sort of kind of brought back the millennials and Gen Z and really taken a genre that was kind of, well, it hadn't actually been, it was dying in book form. It really had moved almost completely to ebook. And this has really reinvigorated it. But there are still some tropes that remain. And one of them seems to be this perfect hero who's also often secretly rich. And
Ray was not secretly rich. He was just rich.
I thought he was a little quiet about how much money he had.
If you have that much money, do you flaunt it?
Some people do.
Well, not the good ones.
No, so it has to be secret.
So it has to be
okay. Rich. Did you ever think of, so what were, as you were playing with some of the romance tropes, like what did you want to make sure that you said, well, if I don't do this, then is it really a romance? And what are the ones you said, I can't take this trope anymore, I want to get rid of it? I don't want to.
Those are a really good question because that's way back in the beginning. I didn't intend to make Ray be a secret wealthy person. I think everybody knows he and his family have money. So it's not like I'm a secret billionaire. And actually he doesn't, his money's kind of tied up in a lot of different places. So he's not completely liquid, but that's getting into the weeds.
Maybe that's what I meant. I meant illiquid.
Yes. I mean, it's not like he has millions sitting in the bank account that he can quickly access because otherwise his entire plot line would have been moot. He still had to prove himself and make a go of it with the supper club. Some of the things that I really didn't want to deal with in this book, I don't know, because here's my feeling on tropes. Every trope works or could be absolutely horrible depending on how it's handled in the book. So when I never just sat down with a list of tropes and said, I'm going to do that one and that one and that one. I didn't approach it that way. It just happened naturally. So you end up with you end up with the fake dating, friends to lovers situation. You end up with the girl who's broke and has to move back in with her parents. And you have the mean girl boss. So I did use all of these common tropes, but that I never checked off a list to incorporate them. They just sort of happened naturally. And I really believe that every trope can work if it's done well. I think it's harder to make some bad, I think it's harder to take a really awful, love interest, be it a guy or a girl, and make them sympathetic. You don't see that too often. Actually, there is this is fantasy romance, but Sarah J. Maas, her series, The Court of Rose and Thorns, I think she did a really great job of taking a character who in the first one you thought was, at least because I had no idea what the story was going in. I didn't read anything. I just knew people liked it, who was really awful, and turning that person around into a love interest in latter books. So it's a hard one to pull off though, and to do well. But she did it. So I think anyone can do it. That's right. Like a hero's journey rom-com. Oh my God. Now I really need to write it.
You do.
Yes, it's going to be, this is recorded.
Yes.
holding you to it.
Oh, funny.
So with Sabrina, one of the things that I thought was kind of a nice treat in the book too is Sabrina's generosity and her, unexpected bits of kindness, especially the pieces in the library books. So you want to talk a little bit about that and just bringing that into the world?
Yes. So in my mind, because Sabrina has such a difficult time interacting with people in real life, she has developed this habit of just almost absent-mindedly doing nice things for people, or sometimes very intentionally, like going into the library and leaving notes and $5 bills in her favorite book so that somebody down the line will find it and get a little special treat. So it has become her way of feeling like part of the community, which is sometimes really difficult for her because she's grown up always feeling like an outsider. Even before her family's gift of seeing dead people manifested itself, she was still from the weird family. So she always was an outsider, and she had been picked on for lots of different things. And then once she started seeing ghosts, it was even worse. So by being, in my mind, like once it was written, this goes back to an earlier conversation we were having about authors putting things in their books that they subconsciously did it. But I really think that her acts of kindness were essentially her natural inclination to help people, which is what her family's gift is about, helping people. They just happen to be dead, manifesting itself. And so it's helping her be a part of the community. And I love that, she's at the water park and somebody's towel falls off and it's by a puddle. So she just picks it up. It's a stranger. She could have just left it there. It wasn't her nieces and nephews' towel. Or at Walmart, where this guy is there with his 2 kids and his arms are full of things and his kids are wandering around. She just gives up her cart, goes to get a new one. So they're just little simple things that they're not going to change the world in a day. But with these little tiny steps of kindness, it makes a difference in the long run. You made a little difference in that man's life, that person who picked up the library book, which I think would be so fun if that became a thing more people did, or even in bookstores. That's okay too.
Well, we return it by mistake.
Oh, so I that was a really important thing for me that I wanted to wind in there and as a part of her personality. And there was another point I was going to make and it drifted off.
Well, Amy, your book, on top of everything else, it's a romance, it's a speculative, it's a historical fiction, and it's also the new incarnation of random acts of kindness.
Oh, I know where I was going to go with that again. And then I lost it again. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I really know where it is. So when I was writing this book, and I'm sure many of you have felt this way, especially over the last few years that have been so difficult in our country for all sorts of reasons, that there's nothing you can do to make a difference, to make things better. And I really wanted to focus on small change and how if you did, maybe I can't change things in Washington or in New York when the pandemic was so awful for them, but maybe I can make changes locally. Maybe I can volunteer on the library boards. Maybe I can, during COVID, check on my neighbors and make sure that they have everything they need. So those things, when you're talking about a smaller community, are much more doable and manageable, and everyone can be a part of. I'm not going to come up with a cure for COVID, but I can help other people and make their lives a little bit better on a day. So I wanted to put that in a book about how, wouldn't it be nice if we all went about our day and one of our little daily goals was, I want to do something nice and make just one person's day a little bit better. Wouldn't that be nice? So there, I got it. I knew it was in there.
Speaking of nice things, I loved your the Humane Society fundraiser that Ray does, sort of.
Oh yes, isn't that fun? Yeah, I wanted, because you want to have a fun way to end a book. So yes, that was, and I liked his partnership. If people read the book, and you've been to Wisconsin Dells and you've been to Ishnala, you're going to be like, huh, there's a lot of similarities there. And Ishnala, and there's a reason. Ishnala is the base, the inspiration for the Otter Club. I did put it in a slightly different location, but if you've been there, the wait is always ridiculously long, and they have a lovely little, few things you can look at as you walk around. But I thought, gee, wouldn't it be fun if you could pet puppies while you were waiting for your reservation for 2 hours? And that could be really effective as far as helping dogs get adopted. So yeah, that's where that came from. Plus dogs, because dogs are wonderful. Yeah. So that was fun.
I think you have a follow-up dog question, Daniel.
Do I?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, yes, I did. If you made a dog the star of one of your novels, what breed would it be? Or mix of breeds?
Oh, you're so funny. So
how did you remember I had that question?
Because I have them all printed out.
Oh, yeah.
I
Ooh, that was
lose my
yesterday. Because you could do a
great.
book. I mean, some of the best books are through dog perspective.
Well, yes, The Art of Racing in the Rain, isn't that one?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm sort of obsessed with Bernese Mountain Dogs, so it would probably just be a Bernese Mountain Dog or some sort of mix of a Bernese, and because I like mutts too.
Mm-hmm.
Or it just could be my super mutt of a dog who, when she just had a haircut, so she looks a lot like Tramp from Lady and the Tramp. But when she's scraggly and scruffy, she looks like a Muppet with long gray hair. Or if you're familiar with Fraggle Rock, there's a Muppet dog on there called Sprocket. My dog looks just like that when she's scruffy. So.
I love the idea of a dog transformation in the book, like, when your dog goes to the prom.
What is happening?
I guess that means Lisa should ask the next question.
I'll save that for the epic
I'm laughing
fantasy.
too hard. Because I'm thinking of those weird Disney movies where the dogs would become people.
Like the Shaggy Dog and stuff like that.
Maybe you could bring this back. It could become the campy romance dog novels.
I'm okay with that. I bet there's a living for it.
And Daniel has theories on dogs on covers too.
Oh, are you willing to share that theory?
Oh, yeah, that's an old theory, but it still works. So if you want to increase sales of your book, it's a good idea to have a dog, but the dog needs to be looking at the reader. Like if you have a dog looking away from the book, that doesn't do anything. They need to be looking at you so that when you look at them, you're like, wow, I guess I better buy this book to make this happy.
Yes.
When the dog is looking away, you look over to see what the dog is looking at. You completely
and then you
missed
buy
your
a cookbook or wherever that's pointing.
Wow. So what I should do is I should have a dog on my cover that's looking at the reader, but then I should surround it by other dogs on covers that are looking at my book. And it will be a bestseller.
Right. So I'm sure Berkeley's really excited that we're designing your next cover with you. They're like, we didn't buy a dog romance novel. That wasn't in the negotiations. Speaking of which, how has it been to have moved over to Berkeley, have a different editor? What's been like being very positive about everybody, because everybody's wonderful.
Everybody is positive.
But people are different. And was there like different kind of technique or different emphasis on things as you move that it's like, it's a new, it's a growth period for you.
It is. It was, I'm very, very fortunate. And this is not just saying it because this is live. I really, truly have had two fantastic editors. I have no complaints. They are both very talented and they get me, but I think they get me in different ways. I feel like I was with Kindred Spirits, I was really allowed to let loose my nerd flag and dive deep into all of my nerdy things that I like to incorporate in books, which often were toned down for my other books, which I think rightfully so. I just think it works really well in this book. and I think that what I'm lucky is because they were both so good, I feel like they helped my writing grow in different ways. My poor first editor really had to probably work with me on a lot of common early mistakes and poke and prod and struggle with me as I learned how to put stories together. And the first book came to her pretty well done, but books 2, 3, 4 was a process that we really worked closely together. And by the time we were done, we had a pretty strong shorthand. And now with my new editor, I feel like I can skip a lot of those early mistakes, and she can give me feedback that's maybe higher level right off the bat. And I can start diving into making my characters deeper, making the plot more intertwined, giving her more things that early on in my career, I would have been like, huh, you want me to do what? So yeah, I don't know if it's hard without going back and looking at all of my editorial notes. It's really hard to say specifics, but while different, I think I'm lucky. They're both really good. But it has been a different experience at both places because, Penguin Random House is a bigger publisher and they have a wider variety of resources available to them. But soon it might be Simon Penguin Random House, who knows? And then Hachette, and then just keep adding on the names.
Don't say this.
No.
And then we're gonna all need old fashions.
I wanted to go back a little with the history too, because there's so much you've included, but when you were doing the research, what were some of the stuff that didn't fit? Well, what was one of your favorite pieces that you discovered? And then what was something you really tried hard to work into it, but it was just defiant in its refusal to be part of the story because it's waiting for the next one?
Oh, let's see. Well, very early version of this book had, I think, hesitate to use the word literary, but it certainly wasn't a romance writing strategy where I had like this. Sabrina would do one of her acts of kindness, and then the next scene would be from the person who she helped perspective to kind of see how it rippled out. So that was something I tried really hard to make work because I liked the idea of being able to show how that actually did good out in the world and how it echoed forward and how those people were able to maybe do something nice for someone else. But I couldn't make that work without completely derailing any momentum in the main storyline. Yeah, some of those scenes were kind of fun. And history stuff. There was all sorts of great stuff about bitters. Like it was totally legal for bitters to be served during Prohibition. They're foul and disgusting, but you can pour a shot of bitters and you could buy a bottle of bitters because it was medicinal. So there was a bar up in Door County, and they still do this, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but you can go in there and you can become a member of the Bitters Club, and it's because you've done a shot of bitters. And they sell single-handedly the most bitter, like a large percentage of the Angostura bitters that are made every year are sold at this bar in Door County. So that I couldn't get that whole history in because it didn't quite fit, but it was great.
I think it was the character in the cemetery that encompasses the bitters story.
Well, that's the character in the cemetery is Belle Boyd, and she was actually a Confederate spy who, after the Civil War, was doing like a tour to make money. I don't know what she was doing. I think it was a talking tour, and she just happened to die in the Dells.
And she was bitter about it.
She was very bitter. Yes, she was very bitter. And she was buried on Union soil. She's fun. She's another one of those goofy characters that I'd love to do more with.
Daniel, you're going to ask about bitters.
Oh,
you were making a face of
I
bitters.
know. I was like, you know how you have this like vague memory of years ago going to some store in Portland, Oregon, and it just like being filled with bitters. Like that's all they were selling.
That seems like a very Portland thing to do.
Yeah, it's like, could that have happened?
Well, yes, it could. And there are places that do that now. Bitters is like with the huge craft cocktail craze. You can, I mean, even at Sendik's, you go in and there's like 6 different kinds of bitters, which is crazy to me. I mean, can't you just have the one kind? But I get it. I actually have grapefruit bitters I put in gin and tonics that are very tasty.
When you were doing your research, did you talk to anyone who did duck tours?
I didn't. Well, my brother used to do duck tours, so yes. But I did this was great. A friend of mine and I were there for a weekend doing research, and we just happened to go to a local bar. And I go to the bathroom, I come back, and she has like recruited some locals. And then we spent the night buying them old fashions, and they spent the night telling us stories about how, you know, the under the skin controversies between like the duck boat company and the boat tour company and all of the like dirt. And that was really, really fun to get like the secret underneath. Like there's one family that has the water parks, and nobody really likes those people over there, but they own, you know, half the city, and this family is in charge of all of the rental properties on Main Street. So I kind of I pulled a little bit of that into the book.
Yeah, you
with,
wound
like,
that
the
in.
Jaspers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I thought that was kind of cool that there were these big families that kind of controlled everything. I think I gave it a bit more structure, but I did my best.
I'm looking forward to your nonfiction book, Duck Boat Confidential, too.
I have taken a fair number of duck boat tours.
Have you, Daniel?
Yes, I took one with my parents when I went to Wisconsin Dells with my parents. So
Okay, I have not.
Yeah. Oh, never. Oh, wow. You know, one of the joys of traveling with my parents is if there was a touristy thing to do, we were going to do it.
I did not do a duck boat tour until I started researching for this book. I find them utterly delightful. They're so cheesy and pun-filled. If you can find yourself embracing that, they're a lot of fun because the groans are well worth it. And it is beautiful, some of the scenes that you get to see. Yeah. I also did not a duck boat tour. So the Dells is broken up into 2 parts. There's the upper Dells, and then there's the dam, and then there's the lower Dells. So the duck boats are on the lower Dells, and then the boat tours are on the upper Dells, which really is the more dramatic scene. So if you want to see the more dramatic landscape, that's where you're going down the skinny Wisconsin River with the tall sandstone cliffs next to you. And the water can get really rough, which I didn't know. And there was a point where I swear, if I had reached my hand out the window, our boat had tipped so far this way, I could have touched water. But apparently they were built to do that, and we weren't in any danger, but it was terrifying. And the boat tours are 2-tiered. So there were people up at the top, and you could kind of hear things rolling around as we went back and forth. It was really, really interesting. But anyway, so boat tours are fun. And that's where you get to go see the Stand Rock that H.H. Bennett made famous. And his picture is a man jumping over there. But within this boat tour, you all get off the boat and they have a German Shepherd that jumps over, which is very safe. There's a net. He's only fallen once. He's been fine. And actually a few dogs that do that. But yeah, so there's that story.
That's his day job. He just jumps back and forth.
Yes, that's the dog's day job. He goes back and forth and does a great job and gets lots of treats.
Seems like the hero for a novel.
He does.
Perhaps the dog is longing for a Burmese mountain dog.
Right. It'll be a perfect romance.
Yeah, Jesse, one of our attendees, mentioned the Museum of Wisconsin Art photography exhibit on the Dells. I think that also turned into a book that I think we had them for, which I'm guessing none of you would. But it was one of the questions we were going to, have I run out of questions? Oh, no, yes.
No. Go ahead.
I think this is both of our question. Where else are you thinking of setting books in Wisconsin?
So my next book is actually going to be back in Milwaukee. Sorry. And that's
great.
And that's a Christmas book. That's all I'm going to say about it.
I hope it's better than that. Did you watch the Hallmark the Fran Drescher Hallmark movie set in Milwaukee? With the famous Carroll Avenue train station that they're renovating? Like, what's Carroll Avenue? What is it?
I was livid that they didn't have one actual Milwaukee landmark.
Not one, nothing.
Not one. It's not like we don't have places that could be like that. And then I think it was like Christmas and there were leaves on the trees, but that's a whole other issue.
They could have done the Oconomowoc train station.
They could have done.
But the train no longer stops.
Well, I don't think it stopped in Carroll Avenue either.
No, they could. I mean, they could have picked a zillion different places where that could have worked.
It was odd.
It was. Well, and fine, make up a Carroll train station. That's fine. Have the little neighborhood, whatever. But show them at some actual Milwaukee locations. Don't like, it was. It made me very
every time they would say Milwaukee, I would like, maybe I like, the other thing is if you don't live in the city, you would actually say what community you were in. And I don't think that was Bayview, and it wasn't the East Side, it wasn't Washington Heights. No. It's clearly a suburb.
No.
So all I wanted to say, but every time they'd say Milwaukee, you could see the character grimacing going, I'm coming back to Milwaukee.
All right.
So I just want to know, do they buy book rights? Because this would make a very good Lifetime Hallmark Netflix.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And they do, I mean, Hallmark does buy book rights to things, and all those places are, there's quite a lot, but please tell your film TV people that you think this would make a great movie.
I will tell my film TV people.
Because I know you have several. So yeah, that would be
Christmas
lovely.
novel. Christmas, see?
Yes.
The way to go.
The Christmas one would be perfect for somewhere. And then you just have to work in like jingle or like, because they all have, especially on Hallmark, they all have like a little, I don't know how they keep coming up with word combinations using the same 5 words, like Noel and Christmas and tree. And like, they only have so many words they're allowed to use.
It's a random app generator.
You're right. Now they're never going to make my movie. I'm teasing about them.
Oh, but that's the beauty that there's at least three companies doing it.
That's true.
Because the competition will get the best of them.
There you go. There you go.
They'll be intrigued by this conversation.
Yeah. And I would be open if HBO wanted to pick it up. I'm not picky.
Okay. Add some superheroes.
You're okay that there's only 3 letters.
That's right. It's just these 3 letters. That's okay.
That's quick.
Okay, I have a question about place. So,
yes,
you are the queen of Wisconsin, or you're certainly in the court.
Thank you.
If you had to pick a different state to set your books, where would it be?
That's a good question.
Oh, I think I know the answer.
Let me pick my answer first, and then I think I would go really different. Do you want me to say mine, or do you want to give me your guess?
No, you go first.
I think I'd go Florida, and here's why. One, I really like to snorkel, and that would be in every book. And because that's research, and then I'd have to be snorkeling all the time. So that's one. 2, people are crazy in Florida, and that would be a lot of fun to write about. So that would be part of it.
How could you out crazy like Pearl Hyacinth? It's like there's a lot of competition for crazy there.
That's true. There is a lot. But
it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. I like my challenges, as we know. That's where my romantic comedy with the hero's journey is going to be set in Florida.
It's writing the book itself.
Yes. But it is hard. Even just thinking about the answer to this question is a little hard, though, because I really do love writing about Wisconsin and celebrating our little corners. There is something. At some point, I want to go up north.
Yes,
but that is.
One of your readers said to me that they wanted you to go. They also wanted you to go up north to a smaller.
Yeah.
Or somebody suggested House on the Rocks, which I also think might be a really interesting place for you to set. Like spot.
You're competing with American Gods, aren't you?
That's
I
true.
guess
Up to the challenge.
I'm up to the challenge. Maybe Neil would blurb it.
Yeah.
Because we're on a first name basis, obviously. No. I actually started a book with an opening scene at House on the Rock, and it just wasn't going where I wanted it to go. It was a little darker than what I normally write, so I needed to kind of put that over there and go in a different direction for a while. But someday, because it was fun, because it is that, talk about a weird place.
Went there with my parents, of course.
Of course you did.
So, well, no, it gets better. They like to go to elder hostels all the time when they were, and they went to they like, the next time they visited me, they're like, we have to go we're to House on the Rock, you have to come with us there. So we went.
I love it. I've actually never been there. I was looking forward to doing that research. I know. And then there's another little town.
But did you see the
where
10,000 Maniacs video at least?
No. Well, in the 80s, because it was in the
Probably.
80s, and then I did. I just don't remember it.
I think
I
that was
really-
10,000 Maniacs. Was it?
I don't remember.
I do kind of remember like a carousel
Yeah.
with in the background. So I'm sure.
No.
Yes.
All right. So are you drinking a sweet or a sour?
Sweet. It was brandy old fashioned sweet.
Okay.
Though I have I didn't have any Sprite, and I was this close to having to make it with ginger ale, which I think would be really good. But it was a sweet, and I had the good cherries, like the
Brandy.
not the Luxardo, because they're like $20 a jar, but they're really not the bright or the bright red maraschino, not those, because those are creepy.
That's what my mother
I know.
craved. She craved those when she was pregnant with me, and they were living in El Paso, and they bought a huge jar of them, like a big jar, and she just ate them.
Wow.
I should have like red skin.
Yes, you should be bright red.
Yes, yes.
Funny.
Are you obsessed with any fruit right now?
Me?
Yeah.
With any
You.
fruit?
We're
No.
transitioning. I
We are
am. So
transitioning.
I thought, as long as we're talking about maraschino cherries, I'm really obsessed with the gooseberries or goldenberries that have started appearing in supermarkets now.
Oh,
Um,
I'm gonna try
I-
those.
I love
Yeah.
them so much. They're from South America, and they're
Oh.
very they're actually a relative of tomatillos, and they're very
Okay.
sticky. You have to wash them off. I buy
Very
like the
interesting.
container and eat the whole container.
And they're not the choke cherry. I'm not choke cherries,
It's
but
it's related to that too.
okay.
They don't call it that on the package, but it is choke cherry or something like that. Yeah.
Interesting. So are they kind of soury or
They're
bittery?
very
or-
sour with a sweet
Wow.
undertone.
Okay,
They'd
I'll
be
have to
good
try
in a
those.
drink. Yeah.
Yeah, that would.
If I was pregnant,
Make-
that's what I would want to eat. Lisa, do you have another question?
I was just gonna see what Amy's been reading lately.
We heard you're championing something.
I am. I finished this recently. I'm actually going to read the second book by this author very shortly, but it is Aisha at Last by Uzma Jalaluddin. And this is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. It's set in a Toronto Muslim community. It is amazing. Very, very well done. And her second one came out last week. And I think I hope I say the title right. I think it's Hannah Khan Carries On. It's beautiful. I'm using it I'm looking down there like it's down there. I'm actually using it to prop up my computer. But I love her covers. They have that like little lovely sheen to them. Just beautiful. So highly recommend Aisha at Last. And yeah, and then you can tell me how much you love it, because you
I'm going to send a link for the new book, or I think I'll send, Hannah Khan Carries On.
Yes.
So let me, I found it. Oh, they are pretty covers, aren't they?
They are very pretty covers.
All right.
Berkeley did a great job.
But this is nice too.
It is. It is.
It is. It doesn't have the shine and the glitter, but it's
We
very
did
nice.
hear that you had actually asked for the Nouveau cartoon covers before they were cool.
When I was with my earlier publisher, I had begged and begged and begged for illustrated covers, because when I started writing, in my mind was writing books like Sophie Kinsella, and she had those fun, illustrated, brightly colored covers. And at the time, that was not on trend. Had we known, I could have been the one who set the trend and started the whole illustrated cover. But alas, I'm just in the middle of it. But I love them. And I'm really pleased. My artist just did such an amazing job. My favorite part is the little duck, who is Norman. I call him Norman after the duck boat in the book.
And the summer sausage.
And the summer sausage. And if you look closely, Wisconsinites, if you look closely at the beer bottles, they are spotted cow. There was an earlier version of this where there was even a little cow on the label, and I was worried we were going to get in trouble for like copying the label. So they made it a little bit more nondescript.
Oh, I think if you had done nothing else but had a cow, I think you could have gotten away with it.
Well, it was very clearly a spotted cow. I mean, because it still had the green striping, but then there was just the cow on there. It was really well done, and I really loved them. But I was just worried they'd give us, I don't know why, but
all they would make you do, usually when you do something like that and they get upset, I think, Charlotte says they probably would have paid you.
No, they wouldn't. If that Starbucks owes me some money.
Well, it's very recognizable. Everybody's recognized it in this. Yeah, all my booksellers are like, did you see? Did you see? Yeah.
Well, I think I'm just checking to see. We've gotten there's a lot of comments, which you're all getting. I will promise to send you, Amy. It's been more comments than questions. So, so we'll be sending them afterwards. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed this.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Daniel, as always. And congratulations, Amy.
Thank you. I'll probably see you in a few days.
Yes.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.